The woman behind the desk had a folder in front of her that was 3 inches thick. 3 inches. I remember staring at it, trying to figure out what could possibly require that much paper for a simple tax audit. I'm a warehouse logistics manager. I've worked at the same company for 18 years. I make $67,000 a year, and that's after my last raise. My taxes should have fit on a napkin. But the IRS doesn't send napkins. They send agents. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice flat, professional, revealing nothing. "Can you explain why your reported income doesn't match the financial activity associated with your Social Security number?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, what financial activity?" She opened the folder, turned it around so I could see, and that's when the room started spinning. There were account numbers, dozens of them. Bank accounts, investment accounts, a brokerage account I'd never heard of. The names of banks I'd never stepped foot in. Transaction histories showing deposits and withdrawals in amounts that made my throat close up. $47,000. Deposited March of last year. $92,000. Transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. $116,000. Moved through what the document called a shell LLC. Before I continue, I need you to understand something. I grew up poor. Not, we couldn't afford vacations, poor. I mean, we ate cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. Poor. My father worked himself into an early grave trying to keep the lights on. My mother clipped coupons like it was a religion. When I got my first real job at 19, I swore I would never, ever let myself get in over my head with money. I don't gamble. I don't speculate. I don't take risks. And I certainly don't open offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. But there it was, in black and white. Under my name, my Social Security number, my date of birth. The agent, her name was Victoria Okonkwo, I would later learn, watched me carefully as I flipped through the pages. "These aren't mine," I said. "They're registered to you, Mr. Chen." "I understand that, but I didn't open them." She didn't react, didn't soften. Her eyes stayed locked on mine like she was reading something written on the inside of my skull. "Mr. Chen, in the past 3 years, over $470,000 has moved through accounts bearing your Social Security number. The income was not reported. The taxes were not paid. That constitutes tax evasion, which is a federal crime. Depending on the amounts involved, we're looking at potential prison time of up to 5 years. 5 years. 5 years in federal prison. For accounts I'd never seen. Money I'd never touched. Crimes I didn't commit. I felt my hands start to shake. Not from fear, from something else. Something colder. Because sitting there, looking at those documents, something was clicking into place. A question I hadn't known I'd been asking for years was suddenly screaming for an answer. Why had Denise always insisted on handling our finances? Why did she get defensive every time I asked about our savings? Why had there been that credit card offer 6 months ago for an account I never opened that she'd quickly explained away as identity theft and handled herself? I looked up at Agent Okonkwo. "I need to see the signature cards," I said, "for these accounts, the original documents." She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I didn't sign them, and I think I know who did." She studied me for a long moment. Then she pulled another sheet from the folder and slid it across the table. I looked at the signature. It was close. Damn close. The M in Marcus had the same basic shape. The C in Chen had the right curve. But the tail on the Y in my middle name, Stanley, was wrong. I always loop it. Always have. My mother taught me to write that way when I was 6 years old, and I've never changed it. This signature didn't loop. It hooked. I looked up at the IRS agent. This isn't my handwriting. Then whose is it? I didn't want to say it. Saying it would make it real. Saying it would mean that the woman I'd shared my bed with for 16 years, the woman who'd promised to love me until death, the mother of my daughter, had been systematically destroying my life while I slept. But I had to say it. My wife's. Agent Okonkwo leaned back in her chair. That, she said slowly, is a very serious accusation. I know. Do you have any evidence? I thought about the credit card offer, the defensive reactions, the way Denise always made sure she was the one who went to the mailbox, the way she'd taken over the bills years ago, insisting I was too stressed to handle them. Not yet, I said. Then I suggest you find some. She closed the folder. Because right now, Mr. Chen, you're looking at federal charges, and unless you can prove someone else did this, you're the one who's going to prison. That's when I realized the woman I loved was trying to send me to prison for crimes she committed, and she had no idea I'd just figured it out. I need to tell you who I was before that day in the IRS office, because if you don't understand who I was, you won't understand why I didn't see it coming, and you won't understand why what happened next took every ounce of control I had. My name is Marcus Stanley Chen. I was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1981. My father was Chinese, second generation. My mother was Irish-American, from a family that had been in Ohio since the Civil War. They met at a factory where they both worked the night shift. They got married 6 months later and had me a year after that. We never had money. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it because it shaped everything about who I became. I learned early that money wasn't something you played with. It wasn't something you risked. Money was survival. Every dollar was a small piece of safety, and you held on to it like your life depended on it, because sometimes it did. My father died when I was 17. Heart attack. He was 46. Worked himself to death, literally. I dropped out of high school to help my mother pay the bills, got my GED at night, started working at a warehouse when I was 19, loading trucks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it paid. I stayed at that company for 18 years, worked my way up from loader to supervisor to logistics manager. Never took a shortcut, never cut a corner, never stole so much as a pencil. By the time I met Denise Patterson, I was 32 years old and finally stable. I had a small apartment, a reliable car, and money in my savings account. Not a lot, but enough that I didn't lie awake at night worrying about how I'd eat. Denise was 28 when we met. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Her smile was the first thing I noticed. Bright, confident, like she knew something the rest of us didn't. She told me she came from a solid family. Her father was a retired electrician. Her mother was a homemaker. She had one brother, Trevor, who worked in construction. She seemed normal. She seemed safe. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. I wanted to be sure. I'd seen too many marriages fall apart over money, and I needed to know she understood the way I thought about finances. I'm never going to be rich, I told her on our 3rd date. I'm always going to be careful. If that's not okay with you, we should stop now. She'd laughed, squeezed my hand. Marcus, I don't need rich. I need real, and you're the most real person I've ever met. I believed her. We got married in 2010. Small ceremony, 60 guests, reception at a VFW hall. Total cost was under $8,000. and we paid for all of it ourselves. No debt. That was important to me. No debt. The first few years were good, normal. We bought a modest house in a suburb outside Columbus. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a yard big enough for a dog we never got. The mortgage was reasonable, the payments were on time. We had our daughter, Emily, in 2012. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything I'd worked for suddenly had a purpose beyond just survival. Denise quit her receptionist job to stay home with Emily. I didn't argue. Childcare was expensive, and we'd crunched the numbers. It made more sense for her to stay home than to pay someone else to watch our kid. But when Emily started school, Denise said she wanted to go back to work. Part-time, she said. Bookkeeping. She'd always been good with numbers. I found a place that'll let me work from home, she told me. 20 hours a week. It'll help with the bills. I thought it was great. Extra income, flexible schedule, something to keep her busy while Emily was at school. She never told me the name of the company, just called it the firm. I didn't push. Why would I? I trusted her. Around the same time, she offered to take over our household finances. You're exhausted when you get home, she said. Let me handle the bills, the taxes, all of it. You focus on work. It made sense. I was pulling 12-hour shifts sometimes, coming home mentally drained. The last thing I wanted to do was sit down and go through receipts, so I let her. I handed over the reins. That was 2015. I didn't know it then, but I had just handed my life to someone who was planning to destroy it. The first anomaly came in March of last year. It was a Saturday. I was home, which was rare. Emily was at a friend's house. Denise was out running errands, or so she said. I went to get the mail. There was an envelope from a credit card company. Pre-approved offer, it said. Congratulations on your excellent payment history with us. I didn't recognize the company name, didn't recognize the account number referenced on the outside of the envelope. When Denise got home, I showed it to her. Oh, that, she said, barely glancing at it. Yeah, someone opened a card in your name a few months ago. Identity theft. I took care of it. What do you mean? You took care of it. I called them, reported the fraud, closed the account. It's handled. Should I check my credit report? I already did. You're fine. She said it so casually, so confidently, like it was nothing. I let it go. Why wouldn't I? She'd handled it. Problem solved. Except something didn't feel right. I couldn't put my finger on it then. It was like a splinter under my skin. Too small to see, but impossible to ignore. I started noticing other things after that. Small things. Easy to dismiss. Denise was on her phone more. She'd leave the room to take calls. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say, the firm, or Mom, or Trevor. Always an easy answer. She got defensive when I asked about our savings. Why do you need to know? She snapped one night. I was just curious. We haven't talked about it in a while. Because there's nothing to talk about. We're fine. Do you not trust me? I backed off. I didn't want to fight. Looking back, I should have pushed. Should have demanded to see the accounts. Should have trusted my instincts instead of my wife. But I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that the woman I'd built my life with was hiding something. So I buried the splinter, ignored the doubt. And then the IRS letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday in April. I remember because Emily had a track meet that afternoon, and I was rushing to get home from work so I could make it. I grabbed the mail on my way through the door, flipping through it as I walked inside. Bill. Junk. Junk. Catalog. And then a plain white envelope with the return address of the Internal Revenue Service. My stomach dropped. Nobody wants to get a letter from the IRS, but I wasn't worried. Not really. I figured it was a minor discrepancy, a missing form, something Denise had overlooked. I opened it. Dear Mr. Chen, your federal income tax return for the tax year 2023 has been selected for examination. This audit is being conducted due to reported income discrepancies associated with your Social Security number. Please contact our office within 30 days to schedule an in-person meeting. Failure to comply may result in additional penalties and potential criminal referral. Criminal referral. I read that phrase 3 times, then 3 more. Denise came into the kitchen. She saw my face. What's wrong? I handed her the letter. She read it. Her expression didn't change. It's probably nothing, she said. A mistake. You know how the IRS is. It says criminal referral. They put that in every audit letter. It's scare tactics. Have you ever been audited? No, but my brother has. It was nothing. She handed the letter back to me, patted my arm. Call them tomorrow. Get it scheduled. It'll be fine. She walked out of the room, and I stood there, holding that letter, feeling the splinter dig deeper. Something was wrong. I didn't know what yet, but I was about to find out. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I called the IRS, scheduled the appointment. They told me to bring all my financial records for the past 3 years. Tax returns, bank statements, pay stubs, everything. I asked Denise for the records. I'll put everything together, she said. Don't worry about it. I'd like to look through it myself. Her eyes flashed, just for a second. Then she smiled. Marcus, this is what I do. Trust me. There was that word again. Trust. I didn't push, but I did something I'd never done before. The next day, while Denise was out, I went into our home office, the one she used for her work, the one I never went into because it was her space. Her computer was locked, password protected. I tried the filing cabinet. Locked. I looked through her desk drawers, found the usual stuff, pens, paper clips, old receipts, and then, in the back of the bottom drawer, I found something else. A key. Small. Bronze. Unremarkable except for one thing. It had a number stamped on it. 1. I turned it over in my hand, felt its weight. I'd never seen this key before, and I had no idea what it opened. The day of my IRS appointment, I drove to the federal building in downtown Columbus alone. Denise had wanted to come, said she could explain the finances better than I could. It's my audit, I told her. I should handle it myself. She'd argued, said I was being stubborn, said I'd just confuse things. I went alone anyway. I sat in that fluorescent-lit waiting room for 45 minutes, watching government employees shuffle past with coffee cups and manila folders. My hands were sweating. My knee was bouncing. I kept thinking about that key. 1. I'd looked up storage facilities in the area. There were dozens. I had no idea which one it belonged to. But I knew it belonged to something Denise didn't want me to find. Marcus Chen? I looked up. A woman in a dark blazer was standing in the doorway. She was in her mid-40s, black, with short natural hair and glasses that made her look like a librarian who could also break your arm. I'm Agent Victoria Okonkwo, she said. Follow me. I followed her down a hallway, through a security door, and into a small conference room. The table was metal. The chairs were uncomfortable. The folder on the table was 3 inches thick. And then she showed me the accounts. I've already told you about that moment. The account numbers, the transaction histories, the $470,000. What I haven't told you is what happened next. After I told Agent Okonkwo that I thought my wife had forged my signature, she went quiet, studied me for a long time. "You understand," she said finally, "that if you're lying to me, you're making this much worse for yourself." "I understand." "And you understand that even if you're telling the truth, I can't just take your word for it." "I understand that too." She nodded slowly. "Then let's start at the beginning. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about our marriage, about how Denise took over the finances, about the credit card offer that she'd dismissed as identity theft, about the defensive reactions when I asked about our savings, about the key I'd found in her desk. Agent Okonkwo listened without interrupting, took notes on a yellow legal pad. Her pen moved in short, precise strokes. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Mr. Chen, what you're describing is consistent with what we call spousal financial fraud. It's more common than people think. One spouse uses the other's identity to open accounts, move money, hide assets. The victim often doesn't know until it's too late." "That's what happened." "Maybe." She leaned forward. "But here's the problem. The accounts are in your name. The signatures are close enough to pass a casual inspection. If this goes to prosecution, the burden of proof is on you to show you didn't authorize any of this." "How do I do that?" "Evidence." She tapped the folder. "You need to prove that your wife opened these accounts without your knowledge. That means bank records showing the account openings, security footage if the banks have it, inconsistencies in the documentation. Anything that shows she did this, not you." I felt something shift in my chest, something cold and hard. "And if I find that evidence?" Agent Okonkwo removed her glasses, cleaned them with the edge of her blazer, put them back on. "Then we'd have a very different conversation. One where you're not the target of this investigation. One where she is." She stood up. "I'm going to do something I don't usually do, Mr. Chen. I'm going to give you 30 days before I refer this to prosecution. Use them wisely." I stood up too. My legs felt unsteady. "Why?" "Because I've been doing this for 22 years, and I've learned to tell the difference between a man who's lying to save himself and a man who just found out his entire life was a lie." She extended her hand. "Find the evidence. Bring it to me." I shook her hand. "I will." I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car in the parking garage for over an hour, staring at the concrete wall in front of me. $470,000. Where had that money come from? Where had it gone? Denise didn't have access to that kind of money. Neither did I. Neither did anyone in either of our families, as far as I knew. Which meant either she'd stolen it, or someone was giving it to her. Or both. I needed to think, needed to plan. If I went home and confronted her, she'd deny everything. She'd cry. She'd tell me I was being paranoid. She'd make me feel crazy for even asking. And then she'd destroy whatever evidence existed. I couldn't let that happen. I stayed calm. I needed proof. So I made a decision. The hardest decision of my life. I was going to pretend everything was normal. I was going to smile at my wife, eat dinner with her, sleep next to her, act like the trusting, oblivious husband she thought I was. And behind the scenes, I was going to tear her secrets apart one by one. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I never call in sick. In 18 years, I'd used maybe 10 sick days total. But I needed time. Time away from Denise. Time to start digging. First stop, the banks. Agent Okonkwo had given me a list of the institutions where accounts had been opened in my name. 6 banks total. 3 were local. 3 were online only. I started with the local ones. First National Bank of Ohio was 20 minutes from our house. I'd never been inside. Never had a reason to. I walked up to the customer service desk, told the young woman behind the counter that I needed to see the original signature card for an account. She looked confused. "Sir, I can pull up your account information on our system. I need the physical signature card, the one I signed when I opened the account." "Is there a problem with the account?" I leaned in, lowered my voice. "I think someone forged my signature. I need to see the original." Her eyes widened. She picked up the phone. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a small office with a branch manager named Gerald Poole. He was in his 50s, balding, and clearly didn't want to deal with this. "Mr. Chen, this is highly unusual. I'm asking to see my own signature card, the one used to open an account in my name. Is that against the rules?" He shifted uncomfortably. "No, but..." "Then please get it." It took another 20 minutes. Gerald disappeared into a back room and returned with a folder. "This is the signature card for the account opened on September 14th, 2022. He handed it to me. I looked at the signature. Marcus S. Chen. The handwriting was close, very close, but the loop on the Y was wrong, just like the one Agent Okonkwo had shown me. "This isn't my signature," I said. Gerald's face paled. "Mr. Chen, I assure you, our verification procedures..." "Who was here when this account was opened? Can you tell me that?" He typed something into his computer. "The account was opened by a woman. She had all the proper identification: driver's license, social security card, a utility bill with your address. Can you describe her?" "I wasn't the one who processed it, but I can check the notes." More typing. "Caucasian female, mid-30s, brown hair. Said her husband, you, was out of town and had asked her to open the account for him." My stomach dropped. That was Denise. My wife had walked into this bank, pretending to be acting on my behalf, and opened an account in my name. "Do you have security footage from that day?" I asked. Gerald shook his head. "We only keep footage for 90 days. This was almost 2 years ago." Damn. But I had something. I had the forged signature card. I had the banker's notes describing a woman matching my wife's description. I asked for copies of everything. Gerald was reluctant, but when I mentioned that this was connected to an IRS investigation, he suddenly became very cooperative. I walked out of that bank with my first piece of evidence. The second bank was worse. Midwest Community Credit Union had been my mother's bank before she died. It was where I'd kept my first savings account when I was 20 years old. And apparently, it was also where someone had opened a money market account in my name with an initial deposit of $75,000. I went through the same process, asked for the signature card. This time, the signature was better. The loop on the Y was almost right. But there was something else: the notarization. In Ohio, certain accounts require notarized documentation to open. The money market account had a notarized affidavit attached, swearing that Marcus Stanley Chen was the rightful owner of the funds being deposited. I looked at the notary stamp. The name was Susan Becker. The commission number was printed clearly. I didn't know anyone named Susan Becker, but I knew how to find her. I thanked the branch manager and left. That evening, I searched the Ohio Notary Public Database. Susan Becker was listed. Her commission had been active for 3 years. Her address was in a suburb called Reynoldsburg, about 30 minutes from our house. I saved the information. I would be visiting Susan Becker very soon. That night, I had dinner with my wife. She'd made meatloaf, my favorite. Mashed potatoes, green beans, the whole thing. "How did it go with the IRS?" she asked as we sat down. "Fine," I said. "They just had some questions about deductions. Routine stuff. See? I told you it was nothing." She smiled at me. That bright, confident smile I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. I smiled back. Inside, something had gone cold. Hard, like a door closing in my chest that would never open again. "How was your day?" I asked. "Busy. The firm had me doing overtime." The firm. "What's the name of that company again? I don't think you ever told me." A flicker in her eyes, just for a second. "Bradley and Associates, accounting firm in Dublin." "Dublin? That's not too far." "Yeah, it's convenient," I nodded. Took a bite of meatloaf. "I should bring you lunch sometime." Another flicker. "Oh, you don't have to do that. I usually eat at my desk anyway." "I'd like to. See where you work." She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. "Marcus, you're sweet. But it's really just a boring office. Nothing to see." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You worry too much." I squeezed back. Maybe. The next morning, I didn't go to work again. I drove to Dublin. Dublin is a wealthy suburb northwest of Columbus. Big houses, expensive cars, corporate office parks. The kind of place where accounting firms set up shop. I found the address Denise had given me when she started working from home. Bradley and Associates, 1847 Corporate Circle, Suite 200. I parked across the street and walked to the building. The directory in the lobby listed all the businesses on each floor. I scanned the list for Suite 200. It wasn't there. I checked again and again. Suite 200 didn't exist. The building only went up to Suite 195. My heart was pounding as I walked to the front desk. "Excuse me," I said to the receptionist. "I'm looking for Bradley and Associates. They're supposed to be in Suite 200. She frowned, typed something into her computer. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have any tenant by that name. And we don't have a Suite 200. "Are you sure? Maybe they moved recently?" "I've been here for 7 years. There's never been a Bradley and Associates in this building." I thanked her and walked out. Denise's job didn't exist. The place she'd been working for the past 9 years was a lie. What I found made my stomach drop. If she wasn't working, where was she going? What was she doing? And more importantly, where was the money coming from? I needed to find out where my wife actually spent her days. The next morning, I left for work like normal. Kissed Denise goodbye. Told her I'd be home around 6. Then I drove to the end of our block and parked. And waited. At 9:17 a.m., Denise's car pulled out of the driveway. Silver Honda Accord, the one we'd bought 3 years ago. She turned right, heading toward the main road. I followed. She took the highway north. Toward Dublin, I thought. Maybe she really did have some kind of office there, just not at the address she'd given me. But she didn't exit toward Dublin. She kept going. 15 minutes. 20. 30. She exited near Delaware, Ohio. Small town, about an hour north of Columbus. I stayed back, kept 2 or 3 cars between us. She turned into a parking lot. I pulled into a gas station across the street and watched. The building she'd parked in front of was large. Neon lights. Big signs advertising restaurants and entertainment. Delaware Gaming Center. A casino. My wife had driven an hour to go to a casino at 9:30 in the morning. I sat there for 3 hours. She never came out. Finally, around 12:45, she emerged. She was on her phone talking to someone. Even from across the street, I could see her expression. She was upset, angry. She got in her car and drove away. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I was shaking too hard. My wife wasn't working. My wife was gambling, and suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. The money, the accounts, the secrecy. She wasn't hiding assets from the IRS. She was hiding a gambling addiction, and she was using my name to do it. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. I stayed calm. I needed proof. Real proof. The kind that would hold up in court. The kind that would clear my name with the IRS and put her in front of a judge instead of me. The key was the next step. 1. I'd been researching storage facilities for days. There were dozens in the Columbus area. Most of them used different numbering systems. I couldn't narrow it down. Then I remembered something. When Denise and I first got married, she'd mentioned that her family used a storage place in Grove City for overflow furniture. Her parents had rented it for years. Grove City was about 20 minutes south of Columbus. I looked up storage facilities there. Found 3. The second one, StoreSafe Grove City, used 4-digit unit numbers. I drove there on my lunch break. The facility was one of those sprawling places with rows and rows of garage-style units. I parked in the lot and walked toward the office. Then I stopped. Because parked in the row closest to me was a car I recognized. Silver Honda Accord. Ohio plates. Denise's car. She was here. I ducked behind a row of units, my heart hammering. What was she doing here? It was the middle of a weekday. She should have been at the casino or at her fake job or somewhere else. I watched. A few minutes later, she emerged from a unit about halfway down the row. She was carrying a small duffel bag. She put it in her trunk, locked the unit, and got in her car. She drove away without looking around. She had no idea I was there. I waited until her car was out of sight. Then I walked to the unit she'd come out of. 1. I pulled out the key I'd found in her desk. It fit. The storage unit was about 10 feet by 10 feet. Metal walls, concrete floor, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, and it was full. There was a small safe in the corner, a filing cabinet, cardboard boxes stacked against the wall, a folding table covered with papers and receipts, and in the center of the floor, a large black garbage bag. I opened the bag first. Cash. Bundles of cash. 20s and 50s and hundreds, held together with rubber bands. I didn't count it. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly. But there had to be at least $50,000 in that bag. I turned to the filing cabinet. The top drawer was unlocked. Inside, I found manila folders, each one labeled with a different bank name. First National. Midwest Community Credit Union. 5 others I didn't recognize. Each folder contained account statements, transaction histories, correspondence, all in my name. All addresses I'd never lived at. All signatures that weren't mine. The next morning, something was different. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. The second drawer was worse. Casino receipts, hundreds of them. Delaware Gaming Center, Hollywood Casino, Rivers Casino. Some from West Virginia, some from Indiana. Dates going back 7 years. Wins and losses, mostly losses. She'd lost over $300,000 gambling in the past 7 years, and she'd hidden it by opening accounts in my name, moving money through them, and not reporting any of it to the IRS. But that wasn't all. The third drawer contained a cell phone, a burner phone, prepaid, the kind you buy at a gas station. It was charged, it was unlocked, and it had text messages. I sat down on the concrete floor and started reading. The messages were between Denise and someone saved in her contacts as T. At first, I assumed it was Trevor, her brother. But the messages weren't about family. They weren't about money. They were about me. He has no idea, thinks I'm at work. When are you leaving him? After the divorce. I'll get the house, half his retirement. Then I'm gone. Can't wait to have you to myself. Soon. I just need him to take the fall for the taxes first. I read that last message 3 times. I just need him to take the fall for the taxes first. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just theft. This was a setup. My wife was planning to frame me for tax evasion, divorce me, take everything I had, and run off with another man. I scrolled further. There were pictures of Denise with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, blonde, wearing expensive-looking clothes. In one picture, they were on a beach somewhere. In another, they were at what looked like a resort. Pictures of my wife on vacation with another man while I was at work, thinking she was at an accounting firm that didn't exist. Then I heard the sentence that changed everything. A voicemail. Recent. 2 days ago. I pressed play. Babe, it's me. Trevor got the divorce papers ready. He says you can file whenever you want. Make sure you do it before the IRS comes back. If Marcus gets indicted, the divorce goes faster. You get the house, the accounts, everything. He's too stupid to fight it. Call me back. Love you. Trevor, her brother. Her brother was a paralegal at a law firm. I'd always thought he was a decent guy. A little lazy, a little shady, but family. He was helping her do this. He was helping her destroy me. I didn't take anything from the storage unit. Not yet. I took pictures, dozens of them. The cash, the files, the phone, every piece of paper, every receipt, every document. I took screenshots of the text messages, the voicemail, the photos, and then I locked the unit, put the key back in my pocket, and drove away. They thought I was finished. I wasn't. That night, I called Agent Okonkwo. I found something, I said. You're going to want to see this. Mr. Chen, it's 8 o'clock at night. I know, and I'm sorry, but this is important. There was a pause. Can you come to the office tomorrow morning, 8 a.m.? I'll be there. I hung up. Denise was in the living room, watching TV. She called out to me. Who was that? Work, I said. Early shift tomorrow. Again? You've been working a lot lately. Yeah, busy season. I walked into the living room, sat down next to her on the couch. She leaned against me, put her head on my shoulder. I'm glad we're okay, she said. With the IRS thing, I was worried. Me too. But it's over now, right? Almost, I said. Almost. Agent Okonkwo's face was unreadable as she scrolled through the photos on my phone. We'd been in her office for an hour. I'd walked her through everything. The storage unit, the cash, the burner phone, the text messages, the voicemail from Trevor. She hadn't interrupted once. When she finished, she set my phone down on her desk. Mr. Chen, she said slowly, do you understand what you've given me? Evidence. More than evidence. You've given me a criminal conspiracy. She stood up, walked to her window, looked out at the Columbus skyline. Your wife didn't just open accounts in your name. She created a systematic scheme to evade federal taxes, commit bank fraud, and set you up to take the blame while she escaped with the money. I know. Her brother is complicit. He's helping her file fraudulent divorce papers and advising her on how to time everything to leave you holding the bag. I know. She turned around. There's more to this, Mr. Chen. More than just gambling losses and hidden accounts. What do you mean? The amounts don't add up. She's lost 300,000 gambling, sure. But the money moving through these accounts totals almost $500,000. Where's the extra coming from? Where's it going? I hadn't thought about that. I don't know. I think I do. She sat back down. Some of these accounts have regular deposits. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. But they're not coming from anywhere I can identify. No employer. No inheritance. No documented source. Stolen? Maybe. Or maybe she's running some kind of operation I haven't figured out yet. Agent Okonkwo pulled a business card from her desk drawer and slid it across to me. I want you to hire this man. His name is Dale Reeves. He's a forensic accountant. Used to work for the FBI. He can trace money better than anyone I know. I picked up the card. What exactly do you want him to find? Everything. She leaned forward. Mr. Chen, I believe you. I believe you're a victim here. But to clear your name completely, we need to understand the full scope of what your wife has done. And more importantly, we need to prove it in court. And then we arrest her. Dale Reeves operated out of a small office in German Village, a historic neighborhood south of downtown Columbus. He was in his 60s, with gray hair and the kind of rumpled suit that suggested he cared more about his work than his appearance. His office was cluttered with files and computer equipment. A poster on the wall showed a tangled web of arrows and boxes, illustrating some kind of money laundering scheme. Spousal fraud, he said after I finished explaining my situation. More common than you'd think. Usually it's a husband hiding assets before a divorce. Less often it's a wife. But when it is, he shook his head. They tend to be thorough. Can you help me? Depends on how much access you can get me. He pulled out a notepad. I need bank statements, tax records, credit card transactions, anything connected to your Social Security number. I can get most of that. I also need access to her financials, your wife's. How am I supposed to get that without her knowing? He smiled. You let me worry about that. Over the next 2 weeks, Dale Reeves did what he called peeling the onion. He started with the accounts I already knew about, used the documents I'd photographed at the storage unit to map out the flow of money. Then he started digging deeper. What he found made the situation even worse. Your wife has been running a check-kiting scheme, he told me during our third meeting. Do you know what that is? No. It's a form of fraud. You write a check from one account to another, taking advantage of the float time, the gap between when the check is deposited and when it actually clears. By moving money between accounts quickly enough, you can create the illusion of having more money than you actually do. And she's been doing this for at least 4 years. He showed me a diagram he'd drawn. She opens an account in your name, deposits a check from another account. The bank credits the deposit before the check clears. She withdraws cash before the first check bounces. Then she uses that cash to cover the bounce, or moves to a new account and starts over. I stared at the diagram. It looked like a spider's web. How much money has she moved this way? Almost $600,000. 600,000. More than I would earn in a decade. Where did it come from originally? That's the interesting part. Dale flipped to another page. About half of it is gambling winnings. She had some big wins over the years. 50,000 here, 80,000 there. Instead of reporting them and paying taxes, she moved them through these accounts to hide them. And the other half? He hesitated. I'm still tracing it, but I think she's been skimming from somewhere. Someone. A business, maybe. Or a family member. I thought about Trevor, his construction company, his willingness to help Denise with the divorce papers. Her brother, I said. Trevor Patterson. He has a construction business. Dale nodded slowly. That would fit. Construction companies deal in a lot of cash. Easy to skim, easy to hide. He made a note. I'll look into it. 3 days later, Dale called me with news. I found the source, he said, and you're not going to like it. What is it? Your wife has been skimming from her brother's company for years. But here's the twist. He knows. He's been letting her do it because she's paying him a cut. A cut of what? The gambling winnings, the check-kiting profits, everything. They're partners, Mr. Chen. They've been running this scheme together for at least 5 years. I sat down heavily. So Trevor isn't just helping her with the divorce. No, he's her business partner in crime. And based on what I'm seeing, he's been using his position as a paralegal to cover their tracks, filing false documents, creating shell companies, making sure the paper trail leads back to you, not them. This isn't drama. This is a scheme, a system. They had built an entire criminal enterprise around destroying my life, and they'd almost gotten away with it. I met with Agent Okonkwo again the following week. Dale Reeves came with me. He brought charts, graphs, timelines, everything he'd uncovered, laid out in meticulous detail. Agent Okonkwo spent 2 hours reviewing the material, asking questions, taking notes. When she was done, she looked at both of us. This is federal-level fraud, she said. Bank fraud, tax evasion, identity theft, wire fraud, because some of these transfers crossed state lines. Conspiracy, because there are at least 2 people involved. What happens now? I asked. Now we build a case, a real one. I need to bring this to my supervisor and the U.S. Attorney's Office. If they agree, we move forward with an investigation. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. I shook my head. I don't have months. The divorce papers could be filed any day. If Denise files before you arrest her, I could lose everything. Agent Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. There might be another way, she said slowly, but it's risky. Tell me. We set a trap. The plan was simple. We knew Denise was planning to file for divorce and make sure I got blamed for the tax fraud. We knew she was planning to clean out the accounts and disappear with her boyfriend, whoever T really was. But she didn't know that we knew. So we would give her exactly what she wanted, or at least make her think she was getting it. Agent Okonkwo explained the strategy. We stage a situation where your wife thinks she's won. We let her move forward with her plan, file the divorce, transfer the money, and right when she thinks she's gotten away with it, we spring the trap. How? We'll need your cooperation. You'll have to play along, act defeated, let her think you're too broken to fight back. And then we catch her in the act, document everything, and arrest her with witnesses present. I didn't want to believe it, but the plan made sense. It would take strength I wasn't sure I had, but I would find it. For Emily, for myself, for 18 years of trust that had been thrown in the garbage. I'm in, I said. Agent Okonkwo nodded. Then let's get to work. The first step was to verify the identity of T. The text messages made it clear that Denise was having an affair. But beyond that initial, she only ever referred to him by that single letter. Dale Reeves had an idea. The burner phone, he said. You said you found it in the storage unit. Did you photograph the call log? Yes. Give me the numbers. I can trace them. I handed over my phone. He squinted at the screenshots. This one. He pointed to a number that appeared repeatedly in the call history. It's the most frequent contact. If that's T, I can find out who he really is. It took him 48 hours. His name is Tony Ferretti, Dale told me when he called. 46 years old. He's a casino host at the Delaware Gaming Center. A casino host. That's how she met him. What does a casino host do exactly? I asked. They handle high-value gamblers, offer perks, comps, freebies, keep them coming back and spending money. Dale paused. Your wife must have been betting big enough to get assigned one, and apparently their relationship became personal. I felt sick. What else do you know about him? He's divorced, 2 kids he doesn't see, lives in a condo in Powell. And here's the interesting part. He has a criminal record. What kind? Embezzlement. He was convicted 12 years ago of stealing from a restaurant chain he worked for. Did 18 months in federal prison. A convicted criminal? That's who my wife was planning to run off with. There's more, Dale said. I traced some of the wire transfers from your accounts. Guess where some of the money went? Where? An account in the Bahamas, registered to a shell company called TF Holdings. TF, Tony Ferretti. She's been funneling money to him. Looks like it. About $120,000 over the past 2 years. I took a deep breath. So she's not just leaving me. She's been financing her escape plan for years. That's what it looks like. I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I said, I want to meet him. Dale was quiet. That's not a good idea, Mr. Chen. I need to see him, face to face. I need to know who I'm dealing with. And what will that accomplish? I don't know, but I need to do it. Dale sighed. If you're going to do this, at least be smart about it. Don't confront him. Don't reveal what you know. Just observe. I will. Tony Ferretti lived in a condo complex in Powell, a wealthy suburb north of Columbus. I parked across the street and waited. It was a Thursday evening. The sun was setting. I had no idea if he was home or at work. Around 8 o'clock, a black BMW pulled into the complex. I watched it park. A man got out, tall, blonde, the same man from the photos on the burner phone. He was wearing a suit, expensive looking. He walked with the swagger of someone who thought he owned the world. This was the man my wife was leaving me for. I watched him enter his building, waited until the lights came on in a second-floor window. Then I drove away. I knew who he was now. I knew what he looked like. And when the time came, I would make sure he went down with her. The next phase was the hardest. I had to go home and pretend nothing had changed. Denise was waiting for me when I walked in. She was in the kitchen making dinner. Pasta by the smell of it. Hey, you're home late, she said. Traffic. How was work? Fine. She came over and kissed me on the cheek. I felt nothing. Dinner's almost ready. Can you set the table? Sure. We ate together, talked about nothing. Emily was at a friend's house studying, so it was just the two of us. Denise seemed relaxed, happy even. She thought she was winning. She had no idea what was coming. A week later, Denise dropped the bomb. We were in the living room. Emily was upstairs doing homework. Denise had asked me to sit down. Marcus, she said, her voice shaking just enough to seem genuine. I don't know how to say this. I knew exactly what she was going to say. What's wrong? I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about our future. She took a deep breath. I think we should get a divorce. I let the silence hang. A divorce. Yes, I'm sorry. I know this is hard. Why? She had tears in her eyes. Actual tears. We've grown apart, Marcus. We're not the same people we were when we got married. I think we both deserve a chance to be happy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her I knew everything. The accounts, the gambling, Tony Ferretti, the storage unit full of cash. But I stayed calm. Is there someone else? She hesitated, just for a second. No, this is just about us. Liar. I need time to think, I said. Of course, take all the time you need. She reached out and squeezed my hand. The same hand that had forged my signature on dozens of documents. I still care about you, Marcus. I hope we can do this amicably. Me too. The next morning, I met with Agent Okonkwo and Dale Reeves. She filed the papers yesterday, Dale said. I got a copy from a contact at the courthouse. Standard no-fault divorce. She's asking for the house, half your retirement, and a lump sum settlement for accumulated assets. What assets? We don't have any. Exactly. But she's claiming you do. She's listed undisclosed bank accounts and investments as part of the marital estate. If the court believes her, you'd be forced to produce documents for accounts you didn't know existed. She's setting me up. She's setting you up. Agent Okonkwo leaned forward. This is perfect. We both looked at her. She's tipping her hand. By filing for divorce now, she's committing to a timeline. She needs to move the money before the court can freeze anything, which means she's going to get sloppy. How does that help us? We let her think she's winning. You respond to the divorce papers. Contest nothing. Ask for mediation. Drag it out. And while I'm doing that? While you're doing that, we watch. We document every move she makes, every transfer, every withdrawal. And when she's gathered all the money in one place, ready to run, Agent Okonkwo smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. That's when we arrest her. The next month was torture. I went through the motions of a contested divorce. Met with a lawyer, a real one this time, not Trevor's contacts. Filed responses, requested documents. All the while, Denise thought I was fighting to save my marriage, or at least to save my assets. She had no idea I was building a trap. Dale Reeves kept me updated on her movements. She made another transfer, he told me one evening. $25,000 to the Bahamas account. That's $50,000 this month alone. She's accelerating. She is. I think she's planning to leave soon. That night, I went home and found Denise on her phone in the bedroom. She ended the call quickly when she saw me. Who was that? Just my sister. She didn't have a sister. How's the job search going? I asked. We'd agreed she would start looking for work again as part of the divorce settlement discussions. Good. I have a few interviews lined up. Lies. All lies. I smiled. That's great. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Dale had been monitoring the Bahamas account, the one registered to TF Holdings. She made a booking, he said when he called. A flight to Nassau, one way. When? 2 weeks from now, March 15th. My blood ran cold. She's running. That's what it looks like. And get this, she booked 2 tickets. Tony Ferretti. Has to be. I called Agent Okonkwo immediately. I'm sorry, what financial activity? She opened the folder, turned it around so I could see, and that's when the room started spinning. There were account numbers, dozens of them. Bank accounts, investment accounts, a brokerage account I'd never heard of. The names of banks I'd never stepped foot in. Transaction histories showing deposits and withdrawals in amounts that made my throat close up. $47,000. Deposited March of last year. $92,000. Transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. $116,000. moved through what the document called a shell LLC. Before I continue, I need you to understand something. I grew up poor. Not, we couldn't afford vacations, poor. I mean, we ate cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. Poor. My father worked himself into an early grave trying to keep the lights on. My mother clipped coupons like it was a religion. When I got my first real job at 19, I swore I would never, ever let myself get in over my head with money. I don't gamble. I don't speculate. I don't take risks. And I certainly don't open offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. But there it was, in black and white. Under my name, my social security number, my date of birth. The agent, her name was Victoria Okonkwo, I would later learn, watched me carefully as I flipped through the pages. "These aren't mine," I said. "They're registered to you, Mr. Chen." "I understand that, but I didn't open them." She didn't react, didn't soften. Her eyes stayed locked on mine like she was reading something written on the inside of my skull. "Mr. Chen, in the past 3 years, over $470,000 has moved through accounts bearing your social security number. The income was not reported. The taxes were not paid. That constitutes tax evasion, which is a federal crime. Depending on the amounts involved, we're looking at potential prison time of up to 5 years. 5 years. 5 years in federal prison. For accounts I'd never seen. Money I'd never touched. Crimes I didn't commit." I felt my hands start to shake. Not from fear, from something else. Something colder. Because sitting there, looking at those documents, something was clicking into place. A question I hadn't known I'd been asking for years was suddenly screaming for an answer. Why had Denise always insisted on handling our finances? Why did she get defensive every time I asked about our savings? Why had there been that credit card offer 6 months ago for an account I never opened that she'd quickly explained away as identity theft and handled herself? I looked up at Agent Okonkwo. "I need to see the signature cards," I said, "for these accounts, the original documents." She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I didn't sign them, and I think I know who did." She studied me for a long moment. Then she pulled another sheet from the folder and slid it across the table. I looked at the signature. It was close. Damn close. The M in Marcus had the same basic shape. The C in Chen had the right curve. But the tail on the Y in my middle name, Stanley, was wrong. I always loop it. Always have. My mother taught me to write that way when I was 6 years old, and I've never changed it. This signature didn't loop. It hooked. I looked up at the IRS agent. "This isn't my handwriting." "Then whose is it?" I didn't want to say it. Saying it would make it real. Saying it would mean that the woman I'd shared my bed with for 16 years, the woman who'd promised to love me until death, the mother of my daughter, had been systematically destroying my life while I slept. But I had to say it. "My wife's." Agent Okonkwo leaned back in her chair. "That," she said slowly, "is a very serious accusation." "I know. Do you have any evidence?" I thought about the credit card offer, the defensive reactions, the way Denise always made sure she was the one who went to the mailbox, the way she'd taken over the bills years ago, insisting I was too stressed to handle them. "Not yet," I said. "Then I suggest you find some." She closed the folder. "Because right now, Mr. Chen, you're looking at federal charges, and unless you can prove someone else did this, you're the one who's going to prison." That's when I realized the woman I loved was trying to send me to prison for crimes she committed, and she had no idea I'd just figured it out. I need to tell you who I was before that day in the IRS office. Because if you don't understand who I was, you won't understand why I didn't see it coming. And you won't understand why what happened next took every ounce of control I had. My name is Marcus Stanley Chen. I was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1981. My father was Chinese, second generation. My mother was Irish-American, from a family that had been in Ohio since the Civil War. They met at a factory where they both worked the night shift. They got married 6 months later and had me a year after that. We never had money. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it because it shaped everything about who I became. I learned early that money wasn't something you played with. It wasn't something you risked. Money was survival. Every dollar was a small piece of safety, and you held on to it like your life depended on it, because sometimes it did. My father died when I was 17. Heart attack. He was 46. Worked himself to death, literally. I dropped out of high school to help my mother pay the bills. Got my GED at night. Started working at a warehouse when I was 19, loading trucks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it paid. I stayed at that company for 18 years. Worked my way up from loader to supervisor to logistics manager. Never took a shortcut. Never cut a corner. Never stole so much as a pencil. By the time I met Denise Patterson, I was 32 years old and finally stable. I had a small apartment, a reliable car, and money in my savings account. Not a lot, but enough that I didn't lie awake at night worrying about how I'd eat. Denise was 28 when we met. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Her smile was the first thing I noticed. Bright, confident, like she knew something the rest of us didn't. She told me she came from a solid family. Her father was a retired electrician. Her mother was a homemaker. She had one brother, Trevor, who worked in construction. She seemed normal. She seemed safe. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. I wanted to be sure. I'd seen too many marriages fall apart over money, and I needed to know she understood the way I thought about finances. I'm never going to be rich, I told her on our 3rd date. I'm always going to be careful. If that's not okay with you, we should stop now. She'd laughed, squeezed my hand. Marcus, I don't need rich. I need real, and you're the most real person I've ever met. I believed her. We got married in 2010. Small ceremony, 60 guests, reception at a VFW hall. Total cost was under $8,000, and we paid for all of it ourselves. No debt. That was important to me. No debt. The first few years were good. Normal. We bought a modest house in a suburb outside Columbus. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a yard big enough for a dog we never got. The mortgage was reasonable, the payments were on time. We had our daughter, Emily, in 2012. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything I'd worked for suddenly had a purpose beyond just survival. Denise quit her receptionist job to stay home with Emily. I didn't argue. Childcare was expensive, and we'd crunched the numbers. It made more sense for her to stay home than to pay someone else to watch our kid. But when Emily started school, Denise said she wanted to go back to work. Part-time, she said. Bookkeeping. She'd always been good with numbers. I found a place that'll let me work from home, she told me. 20 hours a week. It'll help with the bills. I thought it was great. Extra income, flexible schedule, something to keep her busy while Emily was at school. She never told me the name of the company, just called it the firm. I didn't push. Why would I? I trusted her. Around the same time, she offered to take over our household finances. You're exhausted when you get home, she said. Let me handle the bills, the taxes, all of it. You focus on work. It made sense. I was pulling 12-hour shifts sometimes, coming home mentally drained. The last thing I wanted to do was sit down and go through receipts, so I let her. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings and paperwork. Agent Okonkwo kept me updated on the case. The evidence against Denise was overwhelming. Between the storage unit contents, the bank records, the burner phone, and Dale Reeves's forensic analysis, there was no way she could beat the charges. Trevor's case was almost as strong. His fingerprints were on the shell company documents. His paralegal login had been used to file fraudulent court papers. He'd been caught on security camera at one of the banks where accounts had been opened in my name. Tony Ferretti was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a lighter sentence. He'd testified about everything: the affair, the money transfers, the plan to run to the Bahamas. The trial was scheduled for September. I didn't attend. I couldn't. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. The IRS formally cleared me of all tax liability. Agent Okonkwo presented the evidence personally, and within days my file was closed. No charges, no penalties, just a letter apologizing for the inconvenience. I wanted to laugh at that. Apologizing for the inconvenience. As if having your wife try to send you to prison was an inconvenience. But I didn't laugh. I just filed the letter away and moved on. The divorce was finalized in June. With Denise facing federal charges, the proceedings were fast and one-sided. I got the house. I got my full retirement. I got everything. Not that there was much left to get. Most of the money Denise had stolen was gone, gambled away, transferred to Tony's Bahamas account, hidden in places we'd never find. But I didn't care about the money. I cared about getting my name back. And I had. Emily moved back home after the school year ended. She was quiet, withdrawn. I didn't push. Some nights, she would come downstairs and sit with me in the living room. We wouldn't talk, just sit. One night, she finally asked, "Did you know? About Mom?" "No," I said. "Not until the IRS letter." "How could you not know?" "Because I trusted her." She was quiet. "Do you hate her?" I thought about that. "I don't know what I feel," I said honestly. "I'm angry, I'm hurt. But hate?" I shook my head. "I don't think I have room for hate. I'm too tired." Emily nodded. "Me too." The trial happened in September, just like they said. I didn't attend, but I followed it in the news. Denise was convicted on all counts: bank fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, identity theft, conspiracy. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Trevor got 5 years. Tony got 3, reduced for cooperation. When the verdict came down, I was sitting in my living room, drinking coffee. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just turned off the TV and went outside. It was a beautiful day. Sunny. The leaves were starting to turn. I stood on my front porch and breathed. For the first time in over a year, I felt like I could breathe. 6 months later, I sold the house. There were too many memories, too many ghosts. I found a smaller place, a townhouse in a different suburb. 2 bedrooms, one for me and one for Emily when she visited from college. Yes, college. Emily had gotten into Ohio State. Full scholarship, academic. She was studying accounting, of all things. "I want to understand how it works," she told me, "so I can never be fooled like that." I didn't argue. I still work at the warehouse, still the logistics manager, still making $67,000 a year. Some days, I wonder if I should do something different, start over completely. But the truth is, I like my job. I'm good at it. And after everything that happened, there's something comforting about routine. Get up, go to work, Come home, make dinner, watch TV, sleep. Simple. After the year I had, simple feels like a gift. Agent Okonkwo called me last month. Just checking in, she said. How are you doing? I'm okay. For real? Yeah, for real. Good. She paused. I've been doing this job for over 20 years, Mr. Chen. I've seen a lot of fraud cases, a lot of spousal betrayals. But what you did, the way you stayed calm, gathered evidence, worked with us, that was impressive. I didn't have a choice. You did. You could have confronted her, could have lost your temper, could have tipped her off and let her escape. But you didn't. Another pause. That takes strength. Most people don't have it. I didn't know what to say. Anyway, she continued, I just wanted you to know. You did good. Thank you. I hung up and sat for a long time, thinking. People ask me sometimes what I learned from all of this. They want a neat lesson, a moral, something they can apply to their own lives to make sure it never happens to them. I'm not sure there is one, but if I had to say something, it would be this. Know your own life. I handed over control of my finances because it was easier, because I trusted someone who hadn't earned that trust, because I was tired and wanted to believe that everything was fine. It wasn't. And by the time I realized it, I was staring down 5 years in federal prison for crimes I didn't commit. So know your own life. Check your own accounts. Read your own mail. Even if you trust someone completely, maybe especially if you trust someone completely, verify. Because the people closest to you can hurt you the most. And sometimes, they will. It's been 18 months now since that day in the IRS office. I'm sitting on my porch as I tell you this story. The sun is setting. The air smells like autumn. Emily is coming home for Thanksgiving next week. We're going to have dinner together. Just the two of us. It won't be like it used to be. Nothing will ever be like it used to be. But it will be real. And after everything I've been through, real is enough. There's one more thing I want to tell you. Last week I got a letter. It was from Denise. She's in prison in West Virginia now. Federal facility. She's been there for over a year. The letter was short, handwritten. Marcus, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for all of it. I was sick. I know that's not an excuse. But I was sick, and I made choices that destroyed everything. I hope Emily is okay. I hope you're okay. I hope someday you can be happy again. Denise. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and closed it. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe I won't. But for now, I'm done looking backward. I'm looking forward. And for the first time in a long time, I like what I see. So, that's my story. The IRS audited me because my reported income didn't match the accounts in my name. Those accounts weren't mine. They were opened by my wife, who was planning to send me to prison, take everything I'd worked for, and disappear with another man. She didn't succeed. I caught her. With help from an IRS agent who believed me, a forensic accountant who traced every dollar, and my own stubborn refusal to be a victim. They thought I was finished. I wasn't. And if you're ever in a situation like mine, if you ever suspect that someone you love is doing something behind your back, remember what I did. Stay calm. Gather evidence. Work the system. And don't confront them until you have everything you need. Because the truth always comes out. You just have to be patient enough to find it. If this story meant something to you, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. I don't tell stories for attention. I tell them because they're true, Because they happen to real people. Because maybe, just maybe, they can keep the same thing from happening to you. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves. And remember, trust, but verify. 2 years after the trial, I got a phone call from Dale Reeves. "Marcus," he said, "you sitting down?" "Should I be?" "You should be." I sat. "Remember how we could never figure out where some of the money came from? The portion that wasn't gambling winnings or the check kiting?" "Yeah." "I found it." I waited. "Your wife was embezzling from her brother's construction company. We knew that. But what we didn't know was that Trevor was also embezzling from the same company, skimming from his own business." "Wait, what?" "Trevor was taking money from his company, giving it to Denise, and then she was moving it through the accounts in your name. He thought he was laundering it, making it clean. What he didn't realize was that Denise was keeping most of it for herself." I tried to process this. So she was stealing from him while he was helping her steal? Exactly. And it gets better. Remember how Trevor turned down a plea deal at first? Kept insisting he was going to fight the charges? Yeah. Well, about 6 months ago, he got new legal representation. They started going through the financial records more carefully, and they figured out what Denise had been doing. Which was? Trevor thought he was giving Denise about $200,000 over the years. Money from his company that she was supposed to be laundering and returning to him. How much did she actually give back? About $60,000. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She was stealing from her own partner. She was stealing from everyone, Marcus. You, the government, the banks, her own brother. By the end, the only person she wasn't stealing from was Tony Ferretti, and that's only because she needed him for the escape plan. I shook my head. What happened with Trevor? He cut a deal, testified against his own sister, said she'd manipulated him for years, convinced him they were partners when really she was just using him. And they believed him? The financial records backed him up. He's still serving time, but they reduced his sentence. He'll be out in 2 years instead of 5. I didn't know how to feel about that. Trevor had helped Denise try to destroy me, but he'd also been her victim, in a way. Then again, he'd known what he was doing when he filed those fraudulent documents. He'd chosen to be part of the conspiracy. Whatever sympathy I might have felt evaporated. Thanks for letting me know, Dale. You're welcome. And Marcus? Yeah? I'm glad you came out the other side of this. Most people don't. I hung up, and I thought about what he said. Most people don't. A month after Dale's call, I decided to visit Denise. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed answers. Maybe I just needed to see her face when she couldn't hide behind lies anymore. The federal prison in Alderson, West Virginia, is about 4 hours from Columbus. I drove there on a Saturday morning, leaving before dawn. The facility was smaller than I expected. Lower security. The kind of place where white-collar criminals serve out their sentences. I went through the security process, handed over my ID, got patted down, walked through a metal detector, and then I was in a visiting room, sitting at a table waiting. She came out 10 minutes later. Prison had changed her. Her hair was shorter, grayer. She looked older than her 44 years. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She sat down across from me. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. "I didn't think you'd come," she finally said. "Neither did I." "Why did you?" "I don't know." Another silence. "How's Emily?" "She's good. Finishing her first year at OSU." "That's good." Denise's eyes glistened. "I miss her. She reads your letters." But she doesn't write back. No. Denise nodded slowly. I don't blame her. We sat there, two strangers who had once shared a life, a home, a child. Can I ask you something? I said. Yes. When did it start? The lying, the stealing, all of it. She looked down at her hands. The gambling started before we met. I thought I had it under control. I didn't. And the accounts? The fraud? That started about 5 years into our marriage. I lost a lot of money, more than we had. I panicked. I thought if I could just win it back. She shook her head. It never works like that. I lost more. And I kept finding ways to cover it. Using my name. Using your name. Using Trevor. Using whoever I could. And Tony? She flinched. I met Tony at the casino. He was charming, attentive. He made me feel like I wasn't a complete failure. She paused. I know how that sounds. It sounds like an excuse. It's not. It's just the truth. I was drowning, and he felt like a lifeline. I didn't realize until later that he was just another anchor pulling me down. I let that sink in. Did you ever love me? She looked up. Her eyes were wet. Yes. In the beginning, I loved you more than anyone I'd ever known. And at the end? At the end, I couldn't feel anything anymore. The lying had hollowed me out. I was just going through the motions, waiting for everything to collapse. And you were going to let me take the fall. I was. Her voice broke. I know that's unforgivable. I knew it even when I was doing it. But I couldn't stop. I didn't know how to stop. I sat back. I'd wanted answers. I'd gotten them. But they didn't change anything. I should go, I said. Marcus. She reached across the table. Her fingers touched mine. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. For all of it. I looked at her hand on mine. Then I stood up. Goodbye, Denise. I walked out of the visiting room, through the security checkpoint, and back into the sunlight. I never went back. The drive home took longer than the drive there. I kept pulling over, getting out, walking around, trying to process what I was feeling. I'd spent almost 2 years hating her, building a case against her, watching her get convicted and sentenced, and now I'd heard her side. It didn't make anything better. It didn't excuse anything. But it did make her human again. And somehow, that was the hardest part. Emily graduated from Ohio State 3 years later. I was in the audience watching her walk across the stage. Bachelor's degree in accounting, magna cum laude. She'd done it, despite everything, despite her mother being in federal prison, despite the headlines, despite the whispers. She'd done it. Afterward, at the reception, she found me in the crowd. Dad. She hugged me tight. Thank you. For what? For everything. For being there. For not giving up. I held her. I'm proud of you, I said. More than you'll ever know. She pulled back, looked at me. I went to see Mom last month. I hadn't known that. How was it? Hard. But I needed to do it. She paused. She asked about you. What did you tell her? That you're okay. That you're happy. She studied my face. Are you? Happy? I thought about it. Was I happy? I'd lost my wife. Lost the life I thought I had. Lost my faith in the person I trusted most. But I'd also gained something. I'd gained clarity. I knew who I was now, in a way I never had before. I knew what I could survive. I knew that even when everything falls apart, you can put the pieces back together. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Emily smiled. Good. It's been 5 years now. 5 years since the IRS letter. 5 years since I discovered the truth about my wife. I'm retired now. Took early retirement from the warehouse. I have a small pension, a paid-off townhouse, and more free time than I know what to do with. I've started volunteering at a local financial literacy center, teaching people how to manage their money, how to read their bank statements, how to spot signs of fraud. The people I work with are mostly low income, working class, the kind of people I grew up with. They remind me of my parents, of myself, 25 years ago, and I tell them what I wish someone had told me. Trust, but verify. Know your own life. Don't let anyone else control your finances, no matter how much you love them, because love and trust are not the same thing, and one of them can kill you. Denise was released on parole last year. She served 6 years of her 8-year sentence. Good behavior, apparently. I don't know where she is now. I don't want to know. Emily told me she's in some kind of treatment program. Gambling addiction, presumably. Trying to rebuild her life. I hope she succeeds. Not for her sake, for Emily's. A daughter needs to believe her mother can change, even if it isn't true, even if the evidence says otherwise. Some things are more important than evidence. I'm sitting on my porch again as I finish telling you this story. It's evening. The fireflies are out. The air smells like cut grass and summer rain. I have a beer in my hand and nothing on my calendar for tomorrow. For a long time, I thought my life was ruined. I thought Denise had taken everything from me. But she hadn't. She'd taken my trust. She'd taken my naivety. She'd taken my belief that the people you love will always do right by you. But she hadn't taken me. I'm still here, still standing, still breathing. And that's something. So, if you're still listening, if you're still with me after all this time, I want to leave you with one final thought. Life is not about what happens to you, it's about what you do after. Denise happened to me. The fraud happened to me. The IRS happened to me. But I'm the one who decided to fight. I'm the one who gathered the evidence. I'm the one who refused to be a victim. You can do the same. Whatever's happening in your life right now, whatever someone's doing to you, whatever you're facing, you have more power than you think. You just have to be calm enough to use it, and patient enough to wait for the right moment. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with me through the whole story. I know it was long. I know there were parts that were hard to hear, but that's life. It's long. It's hard. And sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. But you survive. You rebuild. You move on. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, you find peace. I found mine. I hope you find yours. Take care of yourselves. And remember, the truth always comes out. You just have to be patient enough to find it. There's a question people ask me sometimes that I've never been able to answer. Would you do it all again? They mean, would I marry Denise knowing what I know now? The honest answer is, I don't know. If I hadn't married her, I wouldn't have Emily. And Emily is the best thing in my life. But if I hadn't married her, I wouldn't have spent 16 years living a lie. I wouldn't have come within inches of federal prison. I wouldn't have had to rebuild my entire existence from scratch. So would I do it again? I don't know. What I do know is this. I can't change the past. I can only learn from it. And what I've learned is that trust is earned, not given. I gave my trust to Denise because I loved her, because I wanted to believe in her, because it was easier to believe than to verify. That was my mistake, not loving her. Loving someone is never a mistake. But trusting blindly? Handing over control of my life without asking questions? That was a mistake, and it nearly cost me everything. If you're reading this story, if you've made it all the way to the end, I want you to ask yourself something. Do you know your own life? Do you know where your money is? Who has access to it? What accounts exist in your name? Do you know what your spouse, your partner, your family members are really doing when you're not watching? I'm not saying you should be paranoid. I'm not saying you should spy on the people you love. But I am saying you should pay attention. Check your credit report. Review your bank statements. Open your own mail. Because the truth is, most people don't get audited by the IRS. Most people don't discover that their spouse has been running a criminal conspiracy in their name. But some people do. And if you're not paying attention, you might be one of them. I think about my father sometimes. He died when I was 17. Heart attack. Worked himself to death. I used to think he was weak, that if he'd just taken better care of himself, he would have lived. Now I understand. He wasn't weak. He was exhausted. He spent his whole life carrying the weight of our family on his shoulders, worrying about money, worrying about bills, worrying about keeping us safe. He didn't have the energy to worry about himself. I don't want to die like that. I don't want to die carrying someone else's burden. So I put down Denise's burden, put down the weight of her lies, her choices, her crimes. She made those choices. She has to live with them. I don't. And that realization that I'm not responsible for what someone else did to me was the most freeing moment of my life. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this. You are not responsible for what people do to you, but you are responsible for what you do next. Denise betrayed me. I didn't cause that. I didn't deserve it. I couldn't have prevented it. But I could decide how to respond. I could have given up. Could have let the IRS prosecute me. Could have lost everything and spent the rest of my life in bitterness and regret. Instead, I fought. I gathered evidence. I worked the system. I protected myself and my daughter, and I won. Not because I was smarter than Denise. Not because I was luckier, because I chose to fight. That choice is available to all of us, all the time. Whatever you're facing right now, you can choose to fight. And if you do, you might just win. All right. That's really it now. I've told you everything. The whole story. From the IRS letter, to the arrest, to the trial, to the aftermath. 5 years of my life, compressed into one long narrative. I hope it was worth your time. I hope it helps you somehow. And I hope, if you're ever in a situation like mine, you remember what I did. Stay calm. Gather evidence. Work the system. And never, ever give up. The fireflies are still out. The beer is empty. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and volunteer at the Financial Literacy Center. Teach some people how to manage their money. Maybe save someone from making the same mistakes I made. That's what I do now. That's who I am. Not a victim, not a survivor, just a man who learned something the hard way and wants to help others avoid the same fate. Thanks for listening. Thanks for caring. And remember, trust, but verify. Good night. I haven't told you everything about the investigation. Some parts I left out. Not because they weren't important, but because they were complicated, technical, the kind of details that most people glaze over when they're hearing a story. But if you're still here, if you've made it this far, maybe you want to know. Maybe you need to know. So here's the rest. When Dale Reeves first started tracing the money, he warned me it wouldn't be simple. Financial fraud is like an onion, he said. You peel back one layer, and there's always another underneath. He wasn't exaggerating. The first layer was the accounts themselves. 6 different banks, all with accounts opened in my name without my knowledge. But getting information from those banks wasn't easy. Even though the accounts were technically mine, the banks didn't want to hand over documentation. Privacy policies, legal concerns, bureaucratic red tape. Dale knew how to work around it. "You have a right to your own records," he told me. "The banks have to give them to you. They just don't have to make it easy." So we sent letters, made phone calls, filed formal requests. It took 3 weeks just to get the basic documentation from all 6 banks. But what we found was worth the wait. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Every account had been opened the same way. A woman matching Denise's description would walk in, claiming to be acting on behalf of her husband. She'd have all the right documentation: my driver's license, a copy, probably obtained from our files at home, my social security card, same, and a utility bill with our address. The banks never verified. They took her word for it. Why would they question a helpful wife running errands for her busy husband? But here's where it got interesting. 3 of the accounts had been opened at branches far from our home. One was in Cleveland, one was in Cincinnati, one was in Indianapolis. Denise had traveled hours to open these accounts. Why? Dale figured it out. She was spreading the risk. If one bank got suspicious, the others wouldn't know. And by using out-of-state branches, she made it harder for anyone to connect the dots. Smart. Evil, but smart. The signature cards were the key. I've already told you about the forgeries. The way she'd copied my handwriting, but gotten the loop on the Y wrong. But Dale noticed something else. "Look at the dates," he said, spreading the cards out on his desk. September 2020. March 2021, November 2021, January 2022, August 2022, December 2022. What about them? They're clustered. She opened multiple accounts in quick succession, then stopped for a while, then started again. What does that mean? It means something triggered each wave of account openings, something that required her to access more money fast. We cross-referenced the dates with her casino records. Every wave of account openings followed a major gambling loss. September 2020. She'd lost $40,000 over a 2-week period. March 2021. Another $30,000. November 2021. $55,000. And so on. The pattern was unmistakable. She'd lose big at the casino, panic, and open new accounts to cover the losses. My name, my social security number, my life, all to feed an addiction she'd never told me about. The check-kiting scheme was the most sophisticated part of her operation. Dale spent days explaining it to me, drawing diagrams, walking me through the mechanics. Here's the simplified version. Check-kiting exploits the float, the time between when a check is deposited and when it actually clears. Let's say Denise writes a check for $10,000 from account A to account B. She deposits it on Monday. The bank credits account B immediately, giving her access to the $10,000. But the check doesn't actually clear from account A until Friday. During those 4 days, Denise can withdraw the $10,000 from account B. She now has $10,000 in cash. When Friday comes, the check bounces because account A doesn't have enough to cover it. The bank reverses the credit from account B, but Denise has already taken the cash, and by the time the bank figures out what happened, she's moved on to the next account. Repeat this process across multiple banks, multiple accounts, and you can move huge amounts of money without ever actually having it. That's what Denise was doing. For 4 years, moving money between accounts, withdrawing cash before the checks bounced, and using the float to create the illusion of solvency. The offshore account was the endgame. TF Holdings, registered in the Bahamas. Tony Ferretti's shell company. Dale traced the wire transfers. Over 2 years, Denise had sent $120,000 to that account. That was her escape fund, Dale explained. The money she was going to use to start a new life with Tony. How did she get it out of the country without anyone noticing? Small transfers, under $10,000 each. Banks are required to report anything over that amount, so she stayed just under the threshold. That's illegal. It's called structuring. Yes, it's illegal. It's also another federal charge on the pile. Trevor's involvement was harder to prove. He was careful, smarter than Denise in some ways. He never touched the money directly, never had accounts in his name, never made transfers or wrote checks. But he did use his access as a paralegal to help cover the tracks. Dale found evidence that Trevor had accessed court records to check on any investigations that might connect to Denise's activities. He'd used his law firm's resources to file false documents. He'd even notarized some of the signature cards himself, using a fraudulent stamp. That was how we connected him to Susan Becker, the notary whose name appeared on several of the accounts. Susan Becker didn't exist. The notary stamp was fake, created by Trevor, used by Denise. When Agent Okonkwo presented this evidence to the prosecutors, they added conspiracy charges to Trevor's indictment. He never saw it coming. The storage unit was a treasure trove of evidence, but there was one thing I found there that I haven't mentioned yet. A journal. Denise's journal. It was a leather-bound notebook, the kind you buy at a nice bookstore, hidden in a box of old clothes at the back of the unit. I found it about a week after I first discovered the unit. I'd gone back to take more photos, document more evidence, and I happened to move that box. The journal fell out. I sat on the cold concrete floor and read it. The entries spanned about 6 years. Not daily, sometimes there were gaps of weeks or months, but enough to piece together the story. The first entry was from 2018. Marcus has no idea. I feel guilty sometimes, but not enough to stop. The casino is the only place I feel alive anymore. Is that wrong? Another entry, from 2019. Lost $15,000 last month. Trevor says I need to slow down. He doesn't understand. I can't slow down. I need to win it back. 2020. Opened another account today, in Marcus's name. It's getting easier. He trusts me completely. Sometimes I hate him for that. 2021. Met someone at the casino. Tony. He's a host. He's charming and dangerous and everything Marcus isn't. I know this is wrong. I don't care. 2022. Trevor drew up the divorce papers. We're going to do it after tax season. Let the IRS find the accounts. Let Marcus take the fall. By the time anyone figures it out, Tony and I will be in the Bahamas. I read that last entry 3 times. Let Marcus take the fall. She'd written it down, planned it, documented it, and she'd kept the journal hidden in a storage unit, thinking no one would ever find it. I gave the journal to Agent Okonkwo. It became evidence at the trial. The notary investigation was a rabbit hole of its own. Once we knew the Susan Becker stamp was fake, we started looking at every notarized document connected to Denise's scheme. There were 17 of them. 15 had been notarized by Susan Becker. The other 2 had been notarized by a real person, a woman named Patricia Hong, who worked at the same law firm where Trevor was a paralegal. When investigators questioned Patricia, she broke down immediately. She'd notarized those documents without reading them. Trevor had asked her to as a favor. She hadn't known they were fraudulent. She was fired. Her notary license was revoked, but she cooperated fully with the investigation, testified against Trevor, helped explain how he'd obtained the fake notary stamp, and used the firm's resources to create false documents. Her testimony was crucial in Trevor's conviction. The timeline of the conspiracy, as we eventually reconstructed it, looked like this. 2015. Denise takes over household finances, starts gambling more seriously. 2016 to 2017. Gambling losses mount. Denise starts looking for ways to cover them. 2018. First fraudulent account opened in Marcus's name. The pattern begins. 2019. Trevor becomes actively involved, provides legal cover and false documents. 2020. Denise meets Tony Ferretti at the casino. Affair begins. 2021. Offshore account established. Escape plan takes shape. 2022. Final accounts opened. Divorce papers prepared. IRS investigation triggered, inadvertently, by the sheer volume of unreported income. 2023. IRS audit. Marcus discovers the fraud. Investigation begins. 7 years. 7 years of lies, theft, and betrayal. And I never suspected a thing. People ask me how I could have been so blind. It's a fair question. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. Denise's secrecy about finances, her frequent work trips that took her to casinos, the credit card offer that she dismissed as identity theft, her defensive reactions whenever I asked about money. But I didn't see them as warning signs. I saw them as normal marriage stuff, normal stress, normal life. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wave a red flag and say, "Hey, your wife is committing federal crimes in your name." It hides. It disguises itself. It looks like love and trust and partnership until the mask comes off. And by then, it's almost too late. The trial itself was anticlimactic. I've already told you I didn't attend, but I followed the coverage, read the transcripts. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Documents, financial records, testimony from Patricia Hong and Tony Ferretti, the journal, the burner phone, the storage unit. Denise's lawyers tried to argue that she was a gambling addict, that she wasn't responsible for her actions, that she should be treated, not punished. The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Trevor's trial was even shorter. He tried to turn on Denise, claim he was just following her lead. But the evidence showed otherwise. He'd been an active participant from the beginning. Guilty on all counts. Tony Ferretti pleaded out before his trial, cooperated with prosecutors, got 3 years. And just like that, it was over. The restitution process took longer than the trial. Denise was ordered to pay back the money she'd stolen, all of it. But she didn't have it anymore. She'd gambled most of it away, sent the rest to the Bahamas, spent what was left on lawyers. The court seized what assets she had, the storage unit contents, the money in Tony's offshore account, her share of our home equity. It wasn't enough to cover the losses, not even close. In the end, I got back about $40,000 out of the nearly $500,000 she'd moved through accounts in my name. $40,000. That's what 16 years of marriage and 7 years of fraud amounted to. But I didn't do it for the money. I did it to clear my name, and I did. The IRS officially closed my case in August 2023. I got a letter, a much shorter one this time, stating that all penalties and potential charges against me had been dropped. The investigation had determined that I was a victim of identity theft and spousal fraud. No taxes owed, no charges filed, no black mark on my record. I framed that letter. It hangs on my wall to this day. Recovery for me came in stages. First, there was shock. The realization that everything I thought I knew was wrong. Then anger, hot, burning fury at what Denise had done. Then sadness, grief for the marriage I thought I had, the life I thought I was living. Then acceptance. Slowly, painfully accepting that I couldn't change the past. And finally, peace. Not happiness. Not at first, but peace. The knowledge that I'd done everything I could, that I'd fought back, that I'd won. That was enough. For a long time, that was enough. Happiness came later. About 2 years after the trial, I started dating again. I wasn't looking for it, wasn't ready for it. But it found me anyway. Her name was Carol. We met at the Financial Literacy Center where I volunteer. She was a social worker, there to refer one of her clients. We started talking. Then we started having coffee, then dinner. She was nothing like Denise. Quiet, reserved, the kind of person who says exactly what she means and means exactly what she says. I told her everything, the fraud, the trial, all of it. She listened without judgment. "That must have been terrible," she said when I finished. "It was. But you came through it." "I did." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad," she said. "I'm glad you're here now. We've been together for 3 years. We're not married. We might never be. After what I went through, I'm not sure I'll ever trust that institution again. But we're happy. We have our own bank accounts, our own finances, complete transparency. Trust, but verify. Carol understands why I need that. She doesn't take it personally. She just loves me for who I am. And I love her for the same reason. Emily got married last spring. She's 24 now. Graduated from OSU, working at an accounting firm in Cleveland. Her husband's name is David. He's a good kid. Steady. The kind of person who shows up when he says he will and does what he promises. I gave a speech at the reception. "Marriage," I said, "is a leap of faith. You trust someone with your heart, your life, your future. Sometimes that trust is rewarded. Sometimes it isn't." I looked at Emily. "But even if it isn't, even if the worst happens, you can survive. You can rebuild. You can find your way back to happiness." I raised my glass. "To Emily and David, may your trust always be rewarded, and may you never forget. Love and trust are both necessary, but they're not the same thing." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Emily started crying. Happy tears. She came over and hugged me. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart." That brings us to now. I'm 53 years old, retired, living in my little townhouse with Carol and a rescued golden retriever named Murphy. I volunteer at the Financial Literacy Center 3 days a week. I putter in my garden. I watch too much television. It's a simple life. After everything I've been through, simple feels like a miracle. Denise was released from prison 18 months ago. I know because Emily told me. She's living somewhere in Kentucky now, working at a hotel. Part of her parole requires her to attend gambling addiction meetings. Emily sees her occasionally. I don't ask for details. Some things are between a mother and daughter. I've thought about forgiveness. The concept, I mean. What it means. Whether it's possible. People talk about forgiveness like it's a gift you give to yourself. Like if you don't forgive, you're carrying a burden. Letting the other person win. I don't know if that's true. What I know is this. I don't hate Denise anymore. The anger burned out a long time ago. But I don't forgive her either. Not really. Forgiveness implies that what she did is somehow okay. That it can be moved past. Set aside. What she did isn't okay. It will never be okay. So instead of forgiveness, I have something else. Acceptance. I accept that it happened. I accept that I can't change it. I accept that Denise is who she is, and I'm who I am, and nothing will ever make us what we were before. That's not forgiveness, but it's enough. If you've made it this far, all the way to the end of my story, I have one last thing to say. Thank you. Thank you for listening, for caring, for giving me your time. I know this story was long. I know it was hard. I know there were parts that made you angry, or sad, or frustrated. That's how it felt to live it. But I'm glad I told it. Because somewhere out there, someone is going through what I went through. Someone is discovering that their spouse isn't who they thought. Someone is staring at documents they didn't sign, accounts they didn't open, a life they didn't build. If that's you, I want you to know. You can survive this. You can fight back. You can win. It won't be easy. It won't be fast. It will take everything you have. But you can do it. I did. And so can you. Stay calm. Gather evidence. Work the system. And never, ever give up. The fireflies are out again. Murphy is asleep at my feet. Carol just called to say she's bringing home pizza. Life is good. Not perfect. Not the life I imagined. But good. And after everything, after the lies, the betrayal, the federal investigation, the trial, the rebuilding, good is more than enough. Good is a miracle. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves. And remember, the truth always comes out. You just have to be patient enough to find it. Good night.